So, hello everyone, this is Andre speaking. I hope it's set up correctly. And it's recording, so we're fine. Welcome again to another Twitch session that will be around Blazor. Today I wanna say something about user data in cookies, about storing user data in cookies, as that's something I had to solve because I don't have a way how to store user data in database yet. That's a topic for next session on September 25th, I hope. So I will try to connect Blazor application to Prisma and store some data in the cloud. But until then, I decided to use cookies as a nice way to actually get the data into the user's browser. The use case that I have in my application is that users will be checking if their car can be parked at the spot that they are on at the time. So for that use case, it's perfectly fine to use cookies, as I don't need to track that information, and for their information, they will always be using the same phone. So if we set the cookie for a longer period of time, so that the browser doesn't clear the cookie, then that's quite enough for the current use case. Mainly, I will be using the cookies to store the zone that they have parking allowance for. So that's my use case for storing data in cookies, and at the end I will try to deploy the application to GitHub Pages. I'm using GitHub Pages for all my static projects because it's free. It allows second level domains, and it also features SSL. So if you want your website to have HTTPS enabled, GitHub Pages will actually generate the SSL certificate for you, and you don't have to do anything, just wait for a day or so. So that's the plan for today. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to join the meeting on GoToMeeting. The link is on Twitch. I will also post the link here in the chat room. Oops, I just locked the meeting. Okay, so it should be unlocked. And here is the link. So that was the intro, and let's take a look at the Visual Studio, at what I'm actually gonna be implementing. So the use case, as I explained it with cookies, has one major glitch, and I will try to draw something on the screen to explain what's the problem here. Hopefully that will start quickly. Okay, now I have my Epic Pen here. Okay, I have two screens here, and it seems it's not the best setup here. Okay, this draws. So when I actually decided that I want to use cookies with Blazor, the major bummer was that Blazor doesn't really support storing data in cookies directly. So what you are left with is actually the Blazor app here. Oh, this is not the best color. Maybe use this one. Okay, we have the Blazor app here. And the last time I also used JavaScript interop from the Mono framework to execute some JavaScript code that is basically client side. So in this case, I'm going to be doing the same thing. So from Blazor, I will call JavaScript here. That will just store the cookies in the user's browser. And of course, the same way as I'm storing the cookies, I will be asking the JavaScript code to get me the data back. So just like we did last time, get the data from cookies. There might be some processing here. I'm still not sure how I'm gonna do that. But in the Blazor, the thing that I wanna keep here in Blazor is the business logic. So any kind of parsing and stuff like that around the cookies, I wanna keep here on Blazor side, because here I can, for one thing, I can test it. I can write a unit test for it, and I prefer working in Blazor than working on everything in JavaScript. So That's the main plan. And in order to do that, there is a JS folder in the www root. And here I'm going to create another file. I'm going to call that extensions.js. I don't want to put that into the map.js extensions. I don't want to put that in the map.js because map.js is currently a file that handles everything around the map. That's another page in the application. So I want to separate the code a bit so that this file will be called extensions.js. And here I will need to do 3 things. First thing would be to set cookie with data from Blazor. Another thing would be get cookie from browser or from the request, and probably process it somehow. But we'll see. We'll see what's necessary here. As I said, I would prefer to have as much as code in Blazor. So first of all, let's take a look at what I'm actually going to be storing in cookies. I created one model here called car. You see that this model is not in the generated folder because that's a model that I created apart from the data coming from Kentico Cloud. And in this model, in this simple class called car, there are 3 things. First of them is GUID of that actual car. The second one is identifier, and the third one is a zone ID. Now, in today's case, I'm not going to be using the ID at all. It's here for future when I decide to store these things in a database, maybe in Prisma or in using Prisma, in MySQL database or PostgreSQL, or any other database, doesn't matter. But I will probably need a unique identifier sometime in the future, so that's why I have it here. But for today's case, for the cookies, the only thing I need is the car identifier, so that when a visitor has multiple cars, it's easier for him to identify which car is in which zone, and of course the zone ID. Now, last time I showed you all the zones. Maybe I can do it again, but let me actually show the project in a different window, just to make sure that I'm showing the right thing. I will have to switch to another project, so just give me a second. Okay, I think we're getting there. Sorry. So this is my project that I'm using for the Blazor as a storage of data for Blazor, and under content items, I want to see all the areas. So you see that there are 23 areas currently, and the area ID, as you see it here in this class, that's actually the zone ID. So it could be area ID or zone ID, doesn't really matter. The important thing is that this is an ID and not a name, right? So it's not going to be 104, but it's going to be, actually I'm not sure if I can see the ID here. I think I can. This is the code name. Okay, so that the ID is definitely here in the URL. So this is the zone ID that I want to be storing in the cookies. Because I'm not sure how unique is this gonna be. It is unique right now, but who knows what's gonna happen in the future. So I think I'm better off storing the zone ID. So that's what I want to do. I want to store the zone ID and identifier of the car in cookies, and cookies actually work in a way. Let me open a notepad here so that I can draw something. Cookies actually work in a way that you store key and a value. So I want to store under key, let's do DPH as initials of the project. And here I want to store the car and zone ID pairs. Now obviously this is going to work just for one car, but if the user has some multiple cars, this way of storing the data wouldn't work. So what I decided to do is I'm going to be storing basically an array of cars of this model. And in here is going to be the specific car. So this is going to be identifier, car1, and zone ID, that will be a GUID. And so on for multiple cars. So basically what I'm going to be doing is storing array that I will parse into a string, and then when I want to get the cookie data back, I will just call JSON parse, and I will get the JSON data back into objects. So with that knowledge, let's take a look at how that could work. So in the extensions.js, first of all, let me actually check how I did it here to be consistent. Okay, so here I just did the functions in the file like that, so I'm gonna do the same thing here. So let's do one function I'm gonna be doing for setting cookies. And actually, if I'm not storing any other cookies from the project, but just the ones about cars, I can easily call this save car or set cars. Or set car, I'm actually only storing one car at a time. So I'm gonna set a car in this function. Another function will be for the same thing, but I'm gonna be getting all the cars, not just the one. And I think that's all I'm gonna need here. Maybe I'm gonna be needing some special helper function in the meantime, but so far I think that's fine. So let's take a look at setting the car. So first of all, for every cookie, I need to set a validity of the cookie. In this case, I'm gonna set it to a really long value because I don't expect people to be changing their cars very often. Maybe they will, but then they can just remove it from the system. But I don't want them to lose the data after a day that they are there. So let's say we want to get the current date. So that would be date get time. And I want to append, let's say 1 year. So that's 365 days times 24 hours a day times 60 minutes an hour, 60 seconds a minute, and 1000 milliseconds in a second. So this actually sets the validity of the cookie, or right now it just stores it in the date field. Now we want to get the existing cars from the currently existing cookie. So I'm going to be using the same function as I will define later on. So that's this function. I think I can just use get cars and maybe put this one up so that it's defined. And I want to push the the car that I want to save currently. I want to push that at the end of this list. So I'm going to call push and the car in here. So this actually gives me, if this function gives me an array of cars from cookies, this one will actually push the new car at the end. And the last thing I need to do is just set the cookie. I can call it dph and equals. And here I need to stringify the value. So JSON, I'm going to call the JSON stringify method and just provide the list of cars. Okay, so this is going to set the cookie. Now the other operation for getting the cars will work the exact same way, but the other way around. So, actually, I can use that here as well. I don't need the variable to be global. So let's get the data from cookies here. So the cookie data will be actually, I think this is not going to be that easy. Because, yeah. Let me actually get here another helper function. So this is actually a function that I got online for getting cookies from documents. The thing is that the document cookie actually stores multiple values, and I'm only looking for the one identified by my identifier dph. So this function claims to do that, to give me the cookie according to its name. I found this online, I think on Stack Overflow, and it seems to work quite well. So that's going to be yet another function that I have here. Let's call that getCookie. And I think this can stay the same. So then the getCars will use this function, getCookie, and the name will be dph. So if there are no cookie data, that can be the case when the user is looking at the page for the first time, or looking at the application for the first time. In that case, I want to return an empty array. So I think we can turn this condition around. And if there are any data, then the cars will be stored in a stringified form. So I just need to call JSON parse and provide the data here. And I think we're done. Okay, so set cookie from Blazor. I think that's this part. Get cookie from Blazor. I'll get cookie from browser and or the request, and return the list of cars. I think that is quite self-explanatory. So this actually concludes this file, the extensions.js. Now what I'm going to be needing on the other side is, sorry. So on the other side, I'm going to be creating another service. That service is going to be a car service. And that service will work very similarly to map service that also contains a JS invocable method here. So the car service will also be working that way. Let me check the namespaces if they are the same. Yeah, that's the same. That's okay. So first of all, let me actually copy that over. Oh, we don't call the JavaScript from here. So let me check another service. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one. Here I have the JS runtime, so that's what I want to copy over. And I'm actually going to copy over the constructor as well to save a bit of typing. Okay, so this is car service, and we only need the JS runtime. Okay, now what kind of methods do I need here? First of all, I need to get cars, so that's gonna be return. It's gonna be async because I do everything as async. So I will need a list of cars. Let's call that get cars. And include the right namespace. And I will also need another method called saveCar. And I think that's it for this service. With these methods, I can then work inside my views. So for now, I think this is sufficient. So how is that code going to look like? It's probably going to be very similar to this part. This is actually also, oh sorry, not this one, but where we are using the JS runtime. Oh nice, we're not actually using the JS runtime in this service. So let's do some refactoring and remove that and try to look for another service that contains some JavaScript call. I think map service had some. Doesn't seem like that. Okay, never mind. I'll just write it. If I can't copy it, I'll just write it, and I will put that, or I could return that directly, probably. So I'm gonna be waiting for JavaScript to give me some data. Oh, so we're invoking async, and we're looking for car array, because car array is something that the JavaScript gives me. So that's how I want to map the result. And here I need to provide the identifier of the JavaScript function. In my case, oh, did I close the file? In my case, it's get cars. And because this JavaScript function is global, I don't need to include anything else, just get cars. And obviously at the end, I'm gonna turn that into a list because I need to return a list of cars, and I'm getting an array of cars. So I wanna turn that into a list. And for that, I will also need system.link, that's fine. Task does not contain, okay. Okay, this should work. So this is gonna give me the cars. And while I'm here, I'm gonna do the other part as well. So here it's the other way around when I wanna save the car. So I'm gonna call JS runtime, invoke async. And in this case, I'm not gonna be waiting for anything, but I'll just take the data, give it to JavaScript, and hope that it will save everything. And in this case, the method is called saveCar, I think. Oh, setCar. SetCar, and as an object, I will just pass on the car object. So that's all for the service. And as usual, let me close this. As usual, I always forget about the registrations. So right now I'll just add the singleton registration of the service in the startup class. But fortunately, if you forget about this part, the runtime gives you a pretty nice error message saying exactly what is wrong. So at least that's good. And when we have this service available, the last part would actually be to create a page that would display a form where we can save a car. So I'll create one page like that in Pages here. Okay. Let me just duplicate already existing page. I'll call that settings. And in settings, I actually aim to have a form to set a new car. And then I want to display there a list of already stored cars. For that reason, I already have a component cars list here. I created it some time back, or some time ago. And this was actually never used anywhere. But right now there is actually a nice use case when I can use it. So I just filled the front end with a simple table that shows two columns. One is identifier, the next one is zone allowance. And you see that it has two parameters. One is for cars and one is for areas. I don't think we need this because both of these parameters are set from a parent page. So in this view, what I'm actually doing is going over all the cars and outputting the car identifier, which is quite easy. That's 1-to-1 to what is stored in the cookie. And then I'm outputting the zone name actually. And because I have a zone ID in cookie and I don't want to display the GUID, then I have here a simple link query that finds the right zone according to its ID. And if there is a zone like that, it shows me the system and name, or the system.name, which is the name of the item in Kentico Cloud. Otherwise, if there is no zone, then it displays text no zone. So that's how the cars list component looks like. But let's get back to settings. Now, obviously, I will have to change this a bit. But good thing is that I got both the backend file and the frontend file. So I just need to change a bit of code here. And for the settings base, I will need an area service, but I won't need a JS runtime because the JS runtime handling is already in the car service. The location service will also not be necessary. Basically anything else can be deleted. Okay, now the areas I will keep there and everything else will go away. This is settings. And I can remove all of these codes. Okay, now in the front end, I can pretty much do the same thing. Remove it all and start like this, but we're not starting off of a map base, but settings base. Now let's see if Visual Studio is going to be happy with that change. Hopefully it will be in a moment. Okay, so the page is at the URL/settings, and I think that I already have this in the menu. That's in the shared and nav menu. Yeah, I already have this link in the menu. So nothing else to do here. So the href is settings, that's correct. So right now I need to provide the front end for the settings. I already prepared something in before, so we'll just copy that over. And I will explain what's going on there. So first of all, I'm going to put here settings heading so that we know on which page we are. And this is actually the form front end. I'm using form tag, which is not necessary. So if you're doing Blazor stuff, Blazor forms here that actually need to be stored or worked on in the backend, you don't need to use form. But I'm using Bootstrap as a front end CSS framework. So for that reason, to get the nicely looking form, I need to use form tag here. But it's not necessary for Blazor. And in here, I actually have, on the left side, there is a vehicle label where I can define the car identifier, so however I want to call my car. And the next field is the zone ID. So here there is select that lists all the areas, and I can easily find the zone that I wanna store with the car. I get a lot of errors here. I think that this will be fixed when I compile that. So let's try that. Okay, settings base cannot be found. Let's see. We are in settings base, that should be fine. Blazor should complain actually about not having a new car here, because we're clearly saying here that the placeholder, or that the model, the backend model for this field should be bound to new car.identifier, and the new car is not yet defined in the settings. So this is actually a good warning, but this should be fine as far as I can see. We'll see in a moment. But for this, actually for every form, when you create inputs here, when you create selection dialogues and things like that, other form components, it's actually necessary to have a model in the backend. So let me do that right now. So here I'm gonna actually put a protected car, and I will probably need a namespace here as well. Let's call that new car. So that's a model for the form when we're creating a new car. So I'll just create an instance of that right away. And when someone presses the add button, I will store the data, and then I will put here a new instance of an empty car so that the form is actually reset when a car is created. So that's fine for now. Let's check. So this should go away. Oh, so it seems like the file is called map copy razor. Let me check how the file is actually called on the file system. Now it's called settings. I'll try to reload the project, maybe that'll help. Okay, that's much better. Now the new car was successfully bound. So whenever you create a form control, this is the way how you can bind it to a property of a model that's in the background. So I have it bound to identifier field of the new car. So the identifier is just a simple input field, while the zone ID is actually bound to the select with options. So these options are generated by the areas that I have available. Yeah, so we're actually gonna have to provide areas to this read-only list, and in order to do that, I'll just put here another override, and that will be the override for uninitialized async, of course. And what I'm looking for is a new list of area, and then I'm gonna wait for the area service to provide all areas. So what's wrong here? Oh, okay, my mistake. Now the reason why I'm first creating the list area here and later on waiting for the area service to deliver the data is that because the uninitialized runs in a specific time when the application is starting up, and at this point I don't really have the data from the area service yet. For that reason, the Blazor actually waits for the areas to arrive, but if I didn't have this here, the areas would be actually null, and as Blazor actually waits here on this code call, it would try to render the UI because this is a non-blocking call. So it would try to render the UI, and here it would actually fail on saying that the areas is a null reference exception. So that's why I'm defining the list area here as the first thing, and then the next thing is get all the areas. In reality, it's going to look like that the page is loading, and once it's fully loaded, you will see all the areas in the fields. I will do the same with cars, and I don't have the cars here yet, so let me put here another list of cars. Now I'm using a simple list of cars here because this is coming from my car service. This one is coming from Kentico Cloud, so that's why there cannot be any change here. The data that are coming from Kentico Cloud are the source of truth, so that's why nobody should be changing that. While the cars are coming from the service, and also when I'm gonna be saving a car, I will put that car into this list in here, in this business logic here. So that's why it's a list, because I will be changing that later on. So let's fill that or let's initialize it as a empty list, and then let's wait for cars service. Car service, and we don't have the car service injected, so let me do that. Okay, now we want to get cars. And I think that this is actually an async method, so let me fix that. Both of these are. So get cars async so that we have it consistent throughout the application. So this actually gets me cars. And once we get the cars and areas, we can put here the component that I showed you earlier. That's the cars list that actually needs cars and areas, which are the data that we already have now. So this is going to be the cars list. Cars will be cars, and areas will be areas. Now, no other attribute is needed here. We should see the list of all the cars here. And the last part that I need to do here is to provide the onClick method for adding a car in the list. But let's remove that for now and take a look at how the page actually looks like. I think this should be buildable. Okay, the build succeeded, so let's see if I can run it. Okay, the application is running. Okay, it's a bit long, but you should see the settings here. Let me check the console if there are any errors. Okay, that seems to be fine. So this is the cars list component. You see that there are no cars in my cookies yet. And this is the area, this is the form where I can add a new identifier for a car. And on the right side, I can select which area should be assigned to that car. So in which area the car is allowed to park. So that's looking quite well. The button is not doing anything, which is also correct because I haven't provided the onClick method yet. So let's do that now. OnClick, let's call that add car. Oh, that's of course a method, or will be a method. And let's add that here. So it's a protected void add car. And I'm not specifying any model here because the model is already available via the new car model here. So it's just the backend file of the view. So we already have the car available here. And I like to do a try catch in order to catch any errors, but you can also do it without it. The car will be new car. And then we need to call the car service and save car async. And that's pretty much it. The only thing sometimes necessary to do is to call state has changed. This is mainly in cases that the saving procedure actually causes something on the component to change. So in case, in our case, when we have the list of cars, then obviously I need to call state has changed to re-render the list of cars because there is a new car in the list now. And that's all here. So when we add a car, it calls the add car method. It saves the car using the car service and says the state has changed. So let's see if that's going to work. So I always try to open console and watch what Blazor is doing, because a few times I was just stuck on the loading app text and there was an error, but I was just staring at it for like a minute until realizing that this is way too long. Then I opened the console and there was the error, red shiny error staring at me. So that's why I always open the console to check if everything is going well. And when we go to settings here, let's add here an identifier of my vehicle and a zone. So when I click add, that should be stored in the cookie. Now nothing happened here because the only thing the method needs to do is just to store the car in the cookie. It doesn't need to reset the form. It doesn't need to update the list of cars, because when you look at it, the car service method save car async is not doing anything with the cars list that's right here. So even if we call state has changed, nothing will happen here. But if I reload the page, hopefully we should see the car in the list. If I didn't forget anything, we'll see in a moment. Okay, I'm not seeing the car, so maybe there is something wrong with the cookies. Oh, here it is. So it just took longer than usual, but here is the car that I stored in the previous load. So, oh, sorry, I accidentally opened Outlook. So this is fine from a functional standpoint, but we should also fix the UX a bit so that it actually shows the user what's happening. So the first thing I will do here is, if that car was saved correctly, then I will say that the new car is actually a new instance of the car class. And when I save the car, I will also add it to the cars list. The thing is that when I save the car, it's actually making its way through the car service into the JavaScript methods into the cookie, but nobody's telling the list here, the list of cars here, and the cars list component that there is a new car in the list. So that's why I'm doing this here, adding the car into the list of already stored cars. And the state has changed should reload the component when this underlying list has changed. So this should improve the UX quite a bit. Let's try to see if that's going to work. And while this loads, one little tip for you: if you're building forms and you need to also use the form as I had to because of the front-end framework, then it's a good idea to use the buttons type button, because if you put a submit here, it will actually reload the form every time you click the button. So there is nothing that Blazor is doing about that. If this is a submit button, it's going to reload the page. It's going to work, in my case it was storing the car well, and everything was changed correctly, but it reloaded the page. So that was a UX bad UX. So when we go back to settings, we still have the blue Volvo here, and if I add here, let's say add Volkswagen with no permit, I add it, you see that it's added to the list immediately, and the form was reset, so there are no data here. I can go on and add another car with permit. You see that the list is updated, and when I refresh the whole page, this is again going to take a second, but at the end we should see all 3 cars in the list here. The zone allowance maybe may show no zone for all of them, and in a second it will be switched to the actual zone. This time it was quite quick that I couldn't even see it, but this is because the zones are gathered in an async fashion, so for that reason it may take a second to display all the zones correctly. So this is the way how we can store the data in cookies. I hope that that was clear enough. If you have any questions, just feel free to post them in the chat window. Oh, there's actually one question. Can you submit as long as your form has onSubmit some method? I haven't tried that actually, so I'm not sure if you can do that. But I haven't found a use case where it would be beneficial to actually use a submit button here. So I don't know, not sure, but I will check it later, and I will let you know on Twitter. So for that functionality, I think we're done, we're fine. So the next thing that I wanted to show you is how you can actually deploy that application. And currently, I'm storing all the source code in a private project on GitHub. So the first thing I will actually do is to commit and push all the changes into my repository before we go further. And then I will try to publish the project and put it on GitHub pages. So from the start, I'm actually doing this project as a static site, or sort of a static site. It's not a really static site, but it's a front-end only site. So it doesn't need a server. It just needs some static files repository, which is actually GitHub pages. So it fits the bill perfectly. So right now I'm just doing the thing that I said I will do. So that is commit everything into the repository. So this adds car service, and it also adds settings page. So I'll push that. And now I should have it all here. Okay. And actually, let me make this project or this repository public. That's the danger zone. How is this repository called? Don't park here. Web Blazor. I hope there is nothing secret in this repository, but the most secret thing I think is the project ID. So, and that's nothing really sensitive, so hopefully I'm not making a mistake doing this. But what I wanted to show you is how you can actually publish this whole thing. So Blazor actually makes it really easy for you. Just right click the project and click publish here. And I actually have a folder profile here that was created when I published it for the first time. You see that the target location is bin debug.net standard 2.0 and publish. What Visual Studio will actually do is it will compile everything. It will remove the codes that you're not using, and it will output that into this folder. So when I click on the publish button, we should see a new build here. And I'll open the folder in the meantime. So .NET Standard, publish, and my project is called .park here, so that's the name of the project. And here is the folder that contains all the static resources, all the static files that I will need to put somewhere in order for my website to work. Now, when I open index.html, there is one thing to watch here, and I can actually show that here in Visual Studio as well, because that's the same file, and that's the base URL here. So the base ref URL is important in case the application is not running in the root of the web server. In that case, you have to change this. Otherwise, the slash should work as long as you run in the root of the server. Now, if I run this in the browser, you will see a bunch of errors here. So the loading failed for these scripts because there is no script at this address, right? Because the base URL is just a slash, so it's not finding the file here. You can fix that by changing the base URL, or what you can do is start a HTTP server in that folder and let that server serve all the files. Now, I preferred that option. So what I did is I created a new site here in IIS, or actually I removed it as well. So let me add a new one here. And let's call it Blazor DBH. And the physical path, let me just copy that from here. Yeah. So one warning about the site being on localhost, but right now you see that it's already loading the app, and in console there should be no errors. Right, so the application seems to be working. In settings, we'll see if I get the cookies as well. Oh, there are some errors here. In the get cars async, could not find get cars in window. Okay, let's check if I have all the JavaScript here. Get cars in window, but we have the get cars in there. So this is actually the JS file that should be included, and that contains the get cars. So let's see what's wrong here. Let's see if that JavaScript is included. Maybe I forgot to do that. And I think that's the case because I have the map.js here, but I don't have the extensions here. So let me fix that. Oh, extensions. Oh, it's here. It's here, so let's check if that file is actually loaded. Okay, this is an old file, so this should then be fine. So I think this was a problem just with the cached file, right? Here we have all the cars from the cookies, including the zones, so the website seems to be working well. So the next step is to actually take the whole thing, this thing, and put it on the GitHub pages. So in that case, there are a few ways how you can actually enable GitHub pages. So you see that GitHub pages is currently disabled for my repository, but I can enable it for the master branch, for the docs branch, or I can disable it at all. Now, I want to use hopefully a different branch, but it's probably not going to work because it can support only master branch. So I have basically two options. I can either change the branch with source codes into a source branch, or what I can do is create a docs folder here that will be used as the website root. So I'll try to do the second option so that I don't have to change branches. So this is the root of the repository. So I'll create here folder docs and put all the files here. So I should see the files here then. Let's take a look. Yeah, all the files are in here. So I'll stage it all and commit it into the repository. So adds published version of to docs folder and push that. I'm not sure how my git ignore actually looks like, so this is the first time I'm doing the push of the published site, so we'll see if that works. If it doesn't work, maybe there is something in the git ignore that prevents it from working, but as far as I see, it should be hopefully fine. Right, also the WebAssembly files are in here, so we should be fine. Now let's check the settings, because I still need to allow the GitHub pages and use only the docs folder for GitHub pages. And the site is ready to be published here. So, I'm not sure if this is actually the right domain here, but maybe there is a problem with that. So let me try another domain here. And this should actually be working. Hopefully. Because I already run my personal site on that domain. And it doesn't seem to work. It's throwing 404 errors probably. Right, because I'm actually on a subfolder, so let me fix that. That's exactly the fix that I was talking about before. That in the index.html, the base ref, in my case, shouldn't be just a simple slash, but slash and the repository name. So publish it again. But actually, in my case, the only thing I need to do, because the rest will be the same, so I'll just open the index file in Notepad. And fix it here. Oh, it's already fixed here. So that's the published page, but I'm looking for this one. Okay, that's the right one, which does not have the base ref. So I'll change that and I'll commit it. both changes are fine. So commit that, push it to master, and hopefully the website will start to work. Nope, still nothing. Let's check. Still the old version. Let me actually open an incognito window. Nope, still the old one. Let me check the repository if that's already there. Sometimes it takes a moment. Okay, we have it here. Sometimes it takes a moment to actually have the change on the live side, so finally it's there. And still some loading failed. So it seems it's got a problem with this file. So let's check what the problem is. Oh, I just want the URL. Okay, file not found. Let's check if we have it actually in there. So that's the framework. Blazor.webassembly.js. That file is there as far as I can see. Webassembly.js. Yeah, that file should be there. So why is it not loading here? Okay, so this seems to be a GitHub issue that I will have to take a closer look at. But for the time being, you see that at least the index HTML page was loaded here. So this is my index HTML page, which is correctly loaded. And the only issue is with, let's check, yeah, the map is correctly loaded. Extensions are correctly loaded. So the problem is just with this library. I'm not sure what's currently causing it, so I'll try to investigate that and show you that in the next episode. But you see that it was finally published on GitHub. Of course, this process, the publishing into folder and then taking that and putting that into the repository, pushing that into the repository, and so on, that can of course be automated. Not quite there yet with my project, so when I get there, I will probably try to automate it using some of the CI tools. But for now, you see that it's quite easy to get the front-end resources from the Blazor side, publish that onto GitHub, and get the website up and running in there. Unfortunately, in my case, it doesn't work, but I'll try to investigate why actually GitHub does not feel like providing these files for me. All right, so that's all from me today. I don't see any other questions. So thank you for your attention, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, and we'll talk about storing data on server using Prisma, hopefully. I'll try to see how that can work together with Blazor, and we'll see where that takes us. So thank you for your attention, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.